Welcome to the future of understanding. This is NeuroMind Insights, where we unlock the power of your mind.
Dementia is a terminal, progressive disease, distinct from the natural aging process. It is the physiological consequence of nerve cells actively dying. Once these specific nerve cells die, the human body cannot repair or replace them. This diagram shows a cross-section of two brains, healthy on the left, advanced dementia on the right. As the disease progresses, the gray matter continues to shrink. Because skull volume remains the same, internal void spaces, ventricles in black, drastically expand. The clinical paradox of this disease is its timeline. Research indicates that this active cellular destruction begins up to 20 years before a patient presents with a single noticeable symptom. Because those lost nerve cells cannot be regrown, this progression of atrophy operates strictly in one direction. To track this progression, clinicians rely on the Global Deterioration Scale, or GDS. It is a 7-stage diagnostic model. The primary purpose of the GDS is to take the invisible physiological reality of brain atrophy and map it directly onto the visible clinical decline of the patient. The first 3 stages of the GDS are classified as the pre-dementia phase. During this period, patients maintain complete independence in their daily activities. This graphic maps the 7 stages of the GDS on the left against a 3D model of a healthy human brain on the right. In stage 1, there is no cognitive decline. A patient in this stage will score perfectly normally on any standard cognitive exam. Despite normal outward behavior and no need for clinical intervention, microscopic brain damage is already underway. Moving to stage 2, clinicians introduce the term age-associated memory impairment, or AMI. The primary clinical indicator here is progressive forgetfulness, such as repeatedly misplacing items, that exceeds the typical baseline of normal aging. Even with these lapses, a patient in stage 2 remains highly functioning. They are fully capable of maintaining employment and navigating social interactions without issue. Stage 3 introduces the diagnostic classification of mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. Specific observable deficits emerge at this level. Patients get lost in unfamiliar places, struggle to operate new electronics, and struggle finding words in conversation. This is the point where coworkers and family members will first notice a measurable decline in the patient's work performance and reading retention. Recognizing these cognitive changes, patients often experience mild to moderate anxiety. Many withdraw socially out of denial or fear. If a clinical evaluation is performed at stage 3, doctors can determine a critical baseline for future cognitive testing. Severe, irreversible cell death is actively masquerading as a minor nuisance and standard age-related decline, making the pre-dementia phase a highly deceptive diagnostic period. The transition from pre-dementia into early and moderate dementia, stages 4 and 5, marks the point where the disease becomes medically undeniable. Looking at the brain model, significant atrophy is actively destroying tissue in the temporal lobes. These lobes store new memories and process language. Their death directly correlates to the inability to retain recent information or communicate clearly. Stage 4, classified as moderate cognitive decline, is the tipping point where functional independence breaks down. Patients now completely lose complex executive functions. They can no longer manage finances, balance a checkbook, navigate through airports, or track time and place. They suffer impaired knowledge of current events and struggle to recall details of their personal medical history. In stage 5, moderately severe cognitive decline, atrophy spreads further into surrounding cortical tissue. Consistent caregiving assistance becomes mandatory for survival. There is a profound loss of fundamental recall. Patients are unable to retrieve their own address, phone number, or the current season. However, strict functional boundaries remain at this stage. While patients require assistance choosing appropriate seasonal clothing, they can generally still feed and toilet themselves independently. The shift across stages 4 and 5 represents a structural failure of the brain's executive command centers, permanently revoking independence. The onset of severe dementia in stages 6 and 7 is characterized by systemic physical and psychological breakdown. This cross-section illustrates global atrophy. Widespread shrinkage drastically reduces overall mass, causing the internal void spaces to massively expand. In stage 6, severe cognitive decline, this tissue loss drives severe behavioral shifts. Patients experience delusions, paranoia, and obsessive repetitive actions. A critical physical marker of stage 6 is the loss of willpower for purposeful actions, alongside toileting incontinence. Stage 7, very severe cognitive decline, is the terminal phase of the disease. Functional interaction completely ceases. The patient loses all verbal communication, the ability to walk, and the ability to feed themselves. The physiological endgame occurs when the localized atrophy finally reaches the lower brainstem. The destroyed brainstem permanently stops sending signals to the lungs to breathe and signals for the heart to beat. Severe dementia is the progressive physical shutdown of the body's autonomic survival hardware, ending in total biological failure. The central paradox of this disease is the vast gap between when cellular death begins and when the body finally shuts down. This diagram illustrates the 20-year continuum of cellular destruction in reverse, from terminal shutdown back to a completely asymptomatic state. The strict anatomical rule is that specific clinical symptoms, impacting language, memory, or vision, are entirely dictated by which lobe is actively dying. While a patient's daily behavioral symptoms might fluctuate fluidly between stages, the underlying physical destruction of brain tissue operates strictly as a one-way street. This is why the early pre-dementia stages, stages 1 through 3, are so vital for diagnostics. Mastering the GDS framework provides the most critical tool clinicians have for establishing baselines, for planning interventions, and predicting inevitable functional decline.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to NeuroMind Insights for more.